Hello, I'm Jason, President and CEO of Complex Community Federal Credit Union, and we're excited to be with you again for another series of Money Saving Mondays. What are Money Saving Mondays? Well, we're going to cover a wide variety of topics. We're going to touch on things like savings, investing, insurance, how to buy a house, how to buy a car, credit reports, a whole wide variety of different topics. But we couldn't do it without the partnership with UTPB. We'd like to give a special thanks to Dr. Woodley, Dr. Spurlock, and Diana Ortiz. These ladies, along with the entire UTPB faculty and staff, are focused on you discovering a greater success as you leave to go out to the world. Thanks again, UTPB. Why do we teach financial capabilities? 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 3 out of 4 people. That's a lot of people. What does it mean to live paycheck to paycheck? That means you don't have money to save or invest. You don't have money for food. You might not have peace of mind. You might lose choices or opportunities out there. It adds stress to your life. One of the greatest things you can invest in is your college education and you understanding the financial capabilities. At the end of every session, we're going to have a question and answer period. We'll have our contact slide so you can be able to send us your questions. If we don't touch on your questions in class, send it to us and we'll circle back and answer those questions again in the next session. We're excited. We're ready to run with our Money Saving Mondays.
Hi, I'm Lisa Wyman with Complex Community Federal Credit Union. Today we're going to be talking about making big purchases with borrowed money. So first thing I want to talk about are just some tips around car buying. Everyone thinks this is a really easy process, and it's not. It can be very complex, and if you are not a savvy consumer, if you've not done your homework, if you don't know what you're doing, please take someone with you who knows what they're doing. People get into so much trouble in this arena. We see it every day at the credit union. So where do you start? Most people would say, well, I'm going to go onto a website and I'm going to find my favorite car. No, that's not where you start. You start by knowing your credit score. Know your credit score. Know your credit score. The reason is it makes you a more savvy buyer. You're more likely to get the very best deal that you possibly can because you're armed with knowledge. You're not going to walk into a 12% interest rate when you know that you have excellent credit and you've earned a 1.9. So let me give you an example on why this is so important. On a $20,000 car, if you pay 2.9% interest for 48 months, the total interest that you will pay at the end is almost $1,300. That's not too bad. Now, let's look at the other side, $20,000 loan again, but instead of that nice 2.9% interest, you're saddled with a 16.9% interest rate for that same 48 months. Instead of almost $1,300, you're going to pay over $8,000 in interest. We've seen this happen at the credit union where a member with excellent credit purchased a vehicle and paid some astronomical rate on their insurance when they've earned a low rate. They just didn't have the information. So we educate them, we get them refinanced, life is good. Skip that part of the process. Know your score when you're walking in to buy. Decide between new and used. I love a new car smell, makes me happy. But for most of my life, I've driven used cars and I've done it strategically. My most recent car was a new car, made that decision strategically as well. With a new car, there's no previous owner, there's that nice factory warranty, latest technology, safety features, dealer incentives, and they even change my oil every 5,000 miles at absolutely no cost. That's a real bonus. On a used car, you're generally going to get a little bit better price, but it's on you to investigate the history of that car. Carfax and other groups will help you to see if that car's ever been in an accident, how many previous owners there have been, and then you also don't necessarily pay as much in depreciation when you buy that used car versus the new car. So just be a savvy borrower. The next thing is you still haven't picked out the car. You need to set a budget. So the color, make, model, all of those things. But you need to think too about, for me, I want heated seats. When we bought our last car, that's the only thing I said. I don't care what else it has. I want heated seats. For other people, it's the leather interior. For other people, it's the 4x4. All of those things come with dollar signs. Set your budget. That's the next big step. Then make a list of wants versus needs. Remember those heated seats? That's really a want. I don't need that. What I need is a good, solid vehicle that's going to get me from point A to point B, and it has the safety features that make me feel safe driving that car on these West Texas roads. And then wants would be the heated seats, heated steering wheel, awesome sound system, whatever that might be. So make sure you're differentiating between those two. The next thing, remember, you're not buying the car yet. You've not stepped out onto the lot at the dealership. Do your research. Think about down payment. We talk about this in another one of our segments, but most of you are going to have to make a down payment. How much can you afford to put down, and how much is the lender going to require based on your credit history? Also, what is your budget for the monthly payment? When you walk onto a car lot, the number one question they're generally going to ask is, how much money do you want to spend every month? So you need to have an idea of what that is, but more importantly, you need to understand the entire financial transaction, the entire process, because it's not so much the payment, it's the total package on the loan. So think about that. Go out before you shop and get pre-approved. Your local bank or credit union can do that. And so you walk into the dealership understanding that I've been pre-approved for $30,000, so I don't need to look at the $50,000 vehicle. It's not a responsible purchase for me at this point in the game. Look for dealer discounts. A lot of those happening right now, and that's exciting. And then also look for a trusted dealer or a trusted salesman. We've got a lot of great dealers and salesmen in our area. Sadly, we have a few scoundrels, but make sure that you're looking for someone that you can trust to give you the best information and who's not going to guide you to that $50,000 car when you've only been approved for $30,000. The final thing is, as a part of the research and the process, is you're going to want to negotiate what you consider to be a fair deal. And then also think about things like warranties, after the purchase that help to protect the value of the car over time. So we're going to show you a couple of examples of what it might look like to purchase a car. So this first example is a $12,000 car. You're paying 8% interest. I want you to look down through there. In scenario one, we're actually taking the loan out for 36 months. The monthly payment is going to be a little higher because it's a very short period of time for a vehicle loan, and it's going to be right under $400. Your total interest paid is that $1,633.39. The total at the end of the note is going to be $14,383 and some change. Not bad for a $12,000 car. Let's take a look at scenario two, though. We're going to bump it out to 48 months because we can't afford that $399 payment. $311 is far more comfortable, and that's great, but you're going to wind up paying about $550 more in interest for the privilege of carrying that note out another 12 months. So know, the longer the note, even on the same price car, the more interest you're going to pay over time. Now this is an interesting calculator. It shows you the maximum car you can afford. So how much money can you spend when looking for that vehicle? So let's say you have an 8% interest rate because you don't have great credit, you kind of have mediocre credit, maybe you don't have a long credit history. You're not going to get that nice juicy 2.9, but you can certainly come in around 8%. And right now, all you can afford is $250 a month. Well, if you take that loan out over 48 months, you can afford a car that costs a little more than $10,000. Not a bad deal. But I want you to go all the way to the bottom and look at that example where you could actually pay $500 a month because your budget allows it. You can actually buy twice the car. So instead of $10,240, you're actually going to be able to afford a $20,480 car. Now, when you hear those dollar amounts, what I want you to understand is there are cars out there that are going out for more than $100,000. $20,000 sounds like a lot of money, and it'll buy you a fine car to get around, but it's probably not going to be the car of your dreams. Now let's look at, if we look at an 8% interest rate, and I can pay $650 a month because I'm a rock star and I've got a great job and I can afford to do that. Over 48 months, you could buy a car valued at over $26,000. Let's take a look at that APR though. If I have really good credit, if I've worked really hard, if I've paid things on time, I might actually get a 1.99% interest rate. For that same amount of, that same payment every month, I can actually get a $30,000 car. Interest rate is everything. What you're going to pay in interest is a game changer on some of these situations. So let's switch over to home buying. These are probably two of the greatest purchases that you're ever going to make. Where do I begin when it comes to buying my first home? We get this question a lot. So the first thing is, I'm going to go back to research. You don't just go out and start looking for houses. You need to look at the market. Is it a buyer's market, which means that home prices are suppressed and I can get more home for the dollar? Or is it a seller's market where economy is really great, we don't have a whole lot of houses available, I can charge whatever I want as the seller? You as the buyer are going to be paying more per square foot than you would have in a buyer's market. The second thing that you need to decide is look at the type of the house in the neighborhood that you would like to have, and really understand if you're young and married and you're looking at a family, maybe you need to be looking at schools. Maybe you're looking for activities that are close by. Maybe you want to park. Maybe you want to be really close to downtown because you want to be where all the action is. Think about those types of things. And then you need to decide what you can afford. A quick rule of thumb is that you should never exceed more than 28% of your gross income in order to make a house payment. Again, that's your gross income. That's before taxes or anything else. It's what you make every year before there are any deductions. Personally, my recommendation would be stay closer to 25% of your income, but you can actually do it on 28% of your income. Anything more than that, you might find that you're going to be strapped for cash some months, especially if something out of the ordinary happens. Maybe you need to replace a heating unit, a washer, a dryer, maybe the air conditioner's gone out or you're needing some repairs. You should also look at HOAs, and those are fees that you have to pay to live in certain neighborhoods. Helps to make sure that the common areas are mowed and flowers are planted and everything is lovely. Remember, there's going to be a hefty down payment. For new borrowers, it can be up to 20% of the cost of the home, and that's cash at closing that you have to provide. There are closing costs, which can vary anywhere from a few $1,000s to $10,000 or $15,000, sometimes more, depending on the home. There are going to be property taxes and insurance that have to be figured in there as well. Know your responsibilities. You need to know your credit score. You know, we talked about that before as it related to buying a vehicle, but you need to know your credit score now. And here's some tips and tricks as it relates to that. Get a copy of that report and go over it. If there's anything on there that doesn't make sense or you disagree with, now's the time to handle it, not when you're sitting in front of the mortgage lender. You can also look at anything you need to clean up. Wow, there's a medical collection I wasn't aware of. Let's get that paid off very quickly. So understanding your credit, taking a good look at it before you go to the lender. The other thing that's really important is when you're looking at your credit report and your credit score, if you owe a lot on credit card debt, pay that down before you go to the lender. It will boost your score and put you in a much better position to get a great rate on your home loan. Home loans can go for 15, 20, 30 years, and sometimes beyond. Interest will rack up over that time, so the lower your credit score, the better position you're going to be in. Remember that down payment. And think about employment history. Most people don't want to lend to someone who can't stay at a job for more than 3 or 4 months. they're looking for at least 1 year and really more than that because they're looking for stability. Think about things like home repairs and maintenance. We talked about that just a little bit before. That's why if you're at 28% of your budget on that home payment, you're not leaving a whole lot of room for those repairs and things that are going to come. Like I said, we're happy at 25%, gives you a little bit more wiggle room in your budget for those things. And remember, research. Research is your friend. Research, research, research. The next step would be to find a good credit union or local bank and go in and visit with them about the idea of buying a home. Do they have a mortgage lending program? If they don't, who would they recommend? Remember, we're looking for trusted advisors. And then finally, you got to find a great realtor who's going to work on your behalf. So we've been talking about making big purchases with borrowed money. I've asked Madison Hankins, our financial capability director here at the credit union, to join me today to answer some tough questions. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So just a few questions, some common questions that we get whenever we do this presentation. This is a big one, especially with young people. Rent, buy. Because they feel like they're throwing their money away when they're renting, and they just feel like they should be buying a house and investing instead. So when should you rent? When should you buy?
Well, it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. So renting has lots of advantages. There's a lot less responsibility with renting.
Yes.
If you don't plan on being somewhere for an extended period of time, it makes more sense to rent, right? Because it's not your responsibility and you're not going to be there for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. But if you are planning on planning routes where you are, mm-hmm. And your budget allows for it and you're financially prepared to take on the costs of owning a home, which it can include maintenance and repairs and insurance and some of those things that you don't really think about when you are thinking initially that you might want to purchase a home. Mm-hmm. If you know that you're in a place where you can financially support that, then absolutely owning a home is a great option because it has the opportunity to grow in value and in equity. So it just kind of depends on what season of life you're in and what your financial situation is. So be really honest with yourself about what your budget can really take on, and make sure that you're doing your research and what the pros and cons are for you.
Okay, awesome. Good answer. When is it worth the investment to spend a little bit more money to get more quality? Because, a lot of times we talk to people about watch your pennies, mm-hmm. Buy the ramen noodles, that kind of, use the coupons and all of that. But are there times when it's okay to spend that extra money to just get that higher quality thing?
Yeah, well, so you hear it all the time, you get what you pay for. Mm-hmm. And there we talk about there is a time in life where you live lean and mean, mm-hmm. So that later you can live large. But then there are times that you really have to think about you get what you pay for. So again, it's situational, but when you're thinking about these big purchases, make sure that you are buying again within your budget. So a car. Be really realistic with what you can afford. Mm-hmm. It may not be your dream car right out of college. But when you're thinking about even bigger, your home purchase, mm-hmm. that's your long-term investment. It's the place that you live. Mm-hmm. Buy a little more. Buy what you can buy, or make sure that you're buying for value. You're gonna be able to grow into that home. It's a longer note. It's an investment, mm-hmm. and you live in it. Your car, you don't. Hopefully, you don't live in it, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Make sure you're picking the things that you want to invest a little extra money in wisely, and that you're really being honest with yourself about your budget. Again,
awesome. Yeah. I think that's key is knowing where you are in your budget, what you really and truly can afford. And sometimes we have to wait for the dream car or even the dream house, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so being realistic. How is a down payment calculated? We talked a little bit about that in the presentation, but how is it? Is like there's some magical calculation, or how does all that work?
So we talked a little bit about how your credit score can affect the interest rate that you pay, but it also can affect your down payment. You can go back and watch the video that we did over credit and see really the impact that your down payment can have, that collateral piece. But if you're someone who has got a little bit colorful credit, or your credit is in recovery, that down payment is crucial for you, because it's going to help the lender trust you a little bit more. So they might require that you pay a little higher down payment. So your down payment can be calculated on a percentage based on what your credit score is. But if you can afford to put a little bit bigger down payment down, by all means do it. Help secure that loan a little bit better.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is it has to do a lot with your credit history and those things. So it's not just cookie cutter. It's like every single lender doesn't have the same process, right?
No, there's no magic book that tells you.
Okay.
But again, do your research. Find out what the policies at your local credit union or your bank is, and find out how they calculate that. Just ask the question.
Okay. Thank you. Another good question, if my credit is colorful, talking about that down payment, you've already said it's going to be a little bit bigger because I have colorful credit. How's it going to affect my interest rate?
So credit's all about trust. I kind of mentioned that a second ago. So you want the financial institution and that lender to feel like they can trust you to secure this loan. And so providing that down payment helps them to feel more comfortable, to trust you a little bit more. So again, it's going to be situational by lender, but there's a pretty good chance that if the bigger the down payment that you put down, you might get a lesser interest rate. And the lower your interest rate, the better.
Absolutely. Okay, great. And then last question is long-term loan, short-term loan, interest depreciation. What are the advantages of a long-term versus a short-term, or vice versa?
Okay, so a longer term loan is going to stretch that big chunk over a longer period of time. So you're going to have to pay smaller pieces or smaller payments, which might be an advantage because it fits into your budget better. A shorter term loan, again, shorter time, so you are going to have to pay a little bigger pieces. But know your budget and know how much money you can spend on those payments, because the piece that will get you is that interest piece. The longer you pay out a loan, the more you're going to pay in interest. So that is a disadvantage of those long-term loans. That short-term loan, you're not going to pay as much interest. On a house, think about as you progress in your career, maybe make a little bit more money, or you get promoted in your company, pay a little bit more each month on the principal, so that you're getting paid off sooner and you're paying less in interest. So you can help the interest situation on some of those long-term loans by paying a little bit more. But the other thing that you have to consider is that depreciation piece. If you take a car loan out for a really long time, you run the risk of your car not being worth what you owe on it at the end of your loan, because you've been paying it out so long. So cars depreciate quickly, or more quickly than like a home would. So consider the depreciation and the interest when you're considering the long-term or the short-term loan, and make sure that you again see where it fits in your budget. But always remember that interest piece. It's super important. It gets people every time.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you guys joining us. We'll see you next time.